Right. Hello, all. My name's Kennedy Odell, and I'm a senior manager for advocacy at Smart Growth America, whose partner organization Locus is proud to host today's Building the Stack webinar series. Today's our third installment in this webinar series, and today we'll be focusing on innovative approaches to financing housing development. If you're interested in our previous installments, which focused on utilizing the Opportunity Zones tool for residential development and financing small scale and missing middle housing, you can look on our website, and we have full recaps and webinars available, recordings of each webinar available. Next slide, please. Today we'll have three excellent speakers join us. I'll go ahead and provide a general introduction, and then each speaker will in turn present. We're going to start off with Sherry Taylor, the Executive Director of the Durham Community Land Trustees. Then we'll transition to Dave Foster, the founder and CEO of BDP Impact, and we'll close out with Josh Morrison, the COO and Co-founder of Frolic Community. Next slide, please. We'll start here with introductions. And as I said, Sherry will take over. Sherry will focus on land trusts before Dave moves into the social impact model. And Josh will close us out with the Frolic model, which is focused on co-ops. Then we'll have questions and answer. If you have a question throughout the presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we will, or the Q&A feature, and we will handle it at the end once all of our speakers have had the chance to present. Each speaker will speak for roughly 15 minutes, and then we'll have that Q&A slot, and we will moderate from there. With that, I will stop speaking and pass it over to the folks you are dying to hear. So I will pass it to you, Sherry. Next slide, please.
Thank you for that introduction, Kennedy. Again, I'm Sherry Taylor. I'm the ED of Durham Community Land Trustees. And I'm going to talk to you today about land trusts in general, a little bit about DCLT, and then walk you through a couple of recent deals. Next. So DCLT is the third oldest land trust in the U.S. We've been around for over 40 years, and we were the first to be established in North Carolina. Really our mission is permanent affordability, and that's kind of a traditional land trust tenet. But we are a builder, we're a manager, and of course we advocate for permanent affordability. Next. All right, so a little bit about us. We're located in Durham, North Carolina. We have a mixed rental portfolio. A lot of our rentals are single-family homes and duplexes, but we also support affordable homeownership through the traditional land trust model. We're citywide, and we also are focused on sustainability and accessibility. So we have 3 community gardens, and a lot of our new construction work is focused on, incorporating universal design and ADA accessibility. Next, please. All right, so where's Durham? It's a mid-sized city located in North Carolina, that blue state that we have highlighted there. And it may be like a city that you're from. It's going through a revival now, but it has a long history. We do have one of the largest tech parks in North America. That's Research Triangle Park. But one of the things that we're finding in Durham is that we have a really competitive real estate market. And so our home sale prices have gone up 65% in 6 years. Obviously, DCLT was started many moons ago when Durham wasn't as popular, and that means that we could acquire property at a low price. Those prices are long gone, and we're dealing with land in the central city that's over $1 million an acre. Next, please. So what is a land trust? The first land trust that was ever started was actually a rural land trust in Albany, Georgia, called New Communities Incorporated. And it really started out of the desire to get Black tenant farmers or sharecroppers out of that predatory system of work and into a community ownership model. And so they ended up buying 5,000 acres of land for housing, for commercial activity, and of course, for planting crops. It worked. And so now we have almost 300 CLTs in the United States and also CLTs worldwide. They just copy the model. Next. Okay, just a little bit about land trusts. They can be urban, rural, suburban, um, but some of the things that they do have in common is that they serve low and moderate income individuals. It's a place-based model. So a land trust can own any type of property that you can think of. Myself, my background is in commercial real estate and urban planning, and so I see community land trust as being a very flexible tool for development, a flexible tool for innovation, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But as I said, all different property types can fit into the CLT model. And I think that if you're going to explore this with a CLT or start your own, you really should have all different property types as part of your thinking about what your community needs. One last thing about all land trusts, community land trusts, is that besides permanent affordability, we also have a board that is representative of the community. So 33% of our board members are DCLT renters or homeowners, 33% come from the community, and 33% are open to the general public. So literally, we are community led and we focus on community focused development. Next, please. All right. Here's where I'm going to take a little bit of time. Um, the traditional CLT model separates the interests of property, right? There's about 6 different interests in a property. Think about air rights, mineral rights, gas rights, oil rights, the land itself, and then the improvement or the structure. So in the CLT model, we separate the property into 2. The CLT owns the land. It has a separate PIN number, and then we sell the structure that is on top. And that's what the buyer actually owns when they buy a CLT home. Now, why would we do this? We're doing this, one, to ensure permanent affordability, but also to make a home less expensive to buy. Typically, when you buy a home, you're buying the land and the improvement. And by splitting that, we can really open up home ownership to those who are low and moderate income, those who are maybe shut out of the traditional market rate rentals, market rate home ownership opportunities because they're just too expensive. Next, please. So what does this mean? This means that every time a CLT home is resold, it's resold to another lower moderate income buyer. We actually get back into communication with our buyers and home sellers, and we make sure that the home is sold affordably. How this works is that we have a 99-year ground lease with our homeowners. And that means that they lease the ground that their home is on. Our ground leases are $50 a month. And they have all the responsibilities for that lot. They have to mow the grass and take out the garbage and maintain their backyards. But that 99-year ground lease is renewable. So if you're thinking about, well, what if a person doesn't want to sell their house? They can give it to a child or another family member, and then that family member would get a brand new 99-year ground lease. Next, please. Okay, so how do you partner with the land trust? Well, there's several different ways to partner with the land trust. You could co-develop, where a developer builds and a land trust finances the home or the subdivision. The CLT can be the buyer of a development that was completely developed by someone independently. There can be a partnership where the CLT acquires land and the developer builds on it. And then lastly, joint development. This is where you may have a mixed income property where have some of the homes be market rate and some of them be affordable, and the CLT really sells and manages the affordable homeownership opportunities. Next, please. All right. So this panel really is about innovative finance, and the land trust model is over 50 years old, but it's still considered innovative. And then once we roll in innovative development ideas, it really is innovation on top of innovation. Next, please. All right, so what you're seeing right now is our Guthrie Village Supportive Housing for Veterans. It is a development that just came out of the idea of trying to maximize our land holdings. As I mentioned earlier, DCLT owns a lot of single-family homes. So the homes that you see here on the map that are in blue and gray are primary homes. These are homes that we already owned. And when looking at these lots and them connecting in the back, we had the idea of kind of a pocket neighborhood. And the red brick color rectangles are the accessory dwelling units that are going to be on the back. So these are 5 adjoining lots. By having them adjoin in the back, we can actually create more amenities for our veterans and have a center courtyard and some other amenities there. But these rectangles aren't just rectangles. They're actually made out of shipping container units. We have a design build firm called Maker Studio that is building them for us. I mentioned innovation. Okay, you have a land trust with shipping container, modular construction, and then we're going to layer on supportive housing. We have a partner for that. Um, as a developer and nonprofit, we don't do any case management or supportive housing, but again, we are partnering to be able to do this. Next, please. So here's just a rendering of the ADUs together, and you can see there's some amenities in the backyard. I forgot to mention that these shipping container units are ADA accessible as well. Next, please. All right. Innovation sometimes requires a lot of partners because it's not cheap. And so, like I said, our design build firm is Maker Studio, but we also have the supportive services from Volunteers of America, their local branch, and we have some grant funding in here as well. Next, please. All right, what do they actually look like? Last year, we were able to participate in HUD's Innovative Housing Showcase on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So we built a unit and had it trucked up there. 3,000 people walked through this unit over one weekend, and it was pretty amazing. Like I said, our unit is specially designed for veterans, and so there's a lot of light and it's ADA accessible all throughout the units. Next, please. All right, here's the capital stack, which anytime you are taking out land from a deal, especially a land trust deal, you all will always have a very interesting capital stack. There is never a project that we have that is not interesting. It's a mix of permanent financing, capital magnets funds, some housing bond funds from our city, grants. There's over $400,000 worth of grants in this project, and we're still writing grants for this project. It's in pre-development now. Those shipping container units that you saw should be delivered in October. So, we're looking forward to having them on the ground. But this is the stack. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about this stack later. But traditionally, there's going to be a gap that you have to fill because either, you're being innovative and that takes extra time and money, or for a traditional land trust home that's going to be sold, you're not selling the land, so you have to fill that gap. Next, please. All right. Not only do we build new construction from the ground up, but we also acquire a lot of our rental properties through acquisition. So this is a property that we acquired last summer. It's a NOAA property, 48 units, and the purchase price was $7.24 million. The interest rate here was 6.5 acquisition loan, so a 36-month loan, and we had 85% loan to value on this. Next, please. Okay, a little bit more about our capital stack for Anderson Street. Again, very interesting capital stack. We had our loan for $6.15 million. We had some American Rescue Plan Act funds in this deal. We had some capital grants, some equity, and some pre-development funds. But ultimately, you know, the 15% down payment had to be found. And so, ARPA funds were reimbursable. You had to have that $1.2 million or whatnot upfront. So again, when you're trying to be innovative, when you have innovative development, it still requires dollars. No matter what, no matter where you get them from, you have to pull it together. But typically, like I said, land trust deals will have to have very creative capital stacks to get these projects done. So thanks very much. I'll be happy to answer some questions during the Q&A.
Josh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, this is really great to see both of your presentations and just hear about your work. I see a lot of threads between just the Durham CLT, thinking about single family, the kind of retrofitting of single family land, and then Dave, the way that you've worked to weave capital, unconventional or conventional sources of capital into projects that do unconventional things is very, very cool. So thank you all for joining this, and thanks for inviting us. Frolic Community, we're based in Seattle. We started 6 years ago out of research my co-founder and I were doing at the Center for Real Estate at MIT, focused on community-driven development and how to address the wealth gap between renters and owners as neighborhoods densify. So you could go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide as well. So basically, a lot of the questions that sort of drove our inception and our ongoing work is kind of like everyone has spoken today is just how hard it is for people to access housing security in cities across the country. And we see this especially in places like Seattle, where an average wage earner takes 20 years to save up enough to make a down payment on a home. And at the same time, there's this, we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, but this is also taking place in other cities around the country where, so much of urban America is single family land, and that land is starting to get rezoned for greater density. And that creates a great opportunity in terms of development potential of land, but it also can be a highly displacing factor for areas that are getting rezoned for more density. And the way that it happens makes a huge difference on kind of outcomes. Can you go to the next, if you can go to the next slide. So at a high level, what we're doing is that we are redeveloping single family lots that have been rezoned for more density in partnership with the landowners. And we're building multifamily communities on that land. Generally 6 to 10 units, some are in the 15 to 18 unit range. And we are building these projects as housing cooperatives. So they use a cooperative ownership structure, very similar to the co-ops that you might be familiar with in New York or DC. Co-ops also do exist on the West Coast, but it's a more nascent market. And we're using the cooperative ownership structure primarily because it allows for way more flexibility in the way that you set up your permanent capital stacks, and it creates an opportunity for ownership for people that don't have generational wealth. So the down payments in our projects are between $10,000 and $40,000, and we're able to do this without any government subsidy, without um, necessarily any concessionary financing. So this is it allows an organic way to reduce down payments and allow people to access ownership. And I'll explain more about how we do that. If you can go to the next slide. So this is the first project that we built in Seattle. It's a 10-home community. It was on a previously 7,300 square foot single family lot. And we think a lot about this intersection of design and financial structure. And so what's possible kind of when a cooperative is already a system where, each person owns a resident share, but they also own a piece of the entire project, and how the design of a place can really help with the ongoing continuity of the structure. So because, there's this central courtyard that's a car-free space that kids hang out in and people hang out in the community, it also has been a way that neighbors really get to know each other and build relationships. We built into this project, kind of the lower right image is a common house where there's a large kitchen and dining room. So even though everyone has their own home, this is the space where they can hold events and gatherings. And the community of their, organically started to create a system where they cook once a month. And 2 times a week, someone in the community is cooking food for everyone. So especially for the single parents in the project, it's been an amazing way of building relationship and community. If you can go to the next slide. This is just like more examples of the space. This is a common meal in the bottom. You can keep going to one of the common spaces, the outdoor courtyard. You can keep going. The units, they vary in size from 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms, some detached and some part of the same structure. You can keep going too. This is a baby shower that happened last weekend there, where there was 30 or 40 people in that courtyard. And it's just cool to see, like, image on the right, there's like 6 of the different residences, and Paige, the 2-year-old, is like, whenever I come there, is often on laps of other people within the community when they eat meals together. And there's just like a lot of really beautiful cohesion between the people living in the community. And that's been really special to see just how that's formed with people that had no relationship prior to moving into the project. You can go to the next slide. And we think a lot of this for us is like, thinking of this moment of this Bernadette's one of the owners in the project, and she's a massage therapist and has been renting in the city and never really saw a pathway towards ownership in Seattle. She was able to buy her home in the community, in this case with $5,000 down. And if we just think about this moment in time and 10 years from now, as a renter, she would have spent $360,000 of rent in the city. And now by transitioning into an owner, she'll have built close to $100,000 of equity from her home. And she wants to then buy a more traditional home after that, or help pay for her daughter's education. There's just like it's building this sort of nest egg for the future. And you can go to the next slide. So that's kind of on the ownership side. On the development side, we work with landowners, and we partner with them to build these projects. So this is Mary, she's the landowner partner for one of our projects called Cedars Collective. She has $550,000 of equity in her home, and if you go to the next slide, we're matching that with impact capital, similar sort of return profiles to what Dave was showing, so sort of 9-10% preferred return. And then we're raising that capital to cover the soft cost for the project. And that plus the equity that she holds in her home is enough for us to get a construction loan and then build the project. You can go to the next slide. And then you can go to the next slide again. So this is showing the construction capital stack on the left, which is the equity we raised through impact capital, the homeowner equity, and the construction loan. Pretty classic that when we're building the project, we're often appraising it on a more conventional model, not as a co-op, and I can speak more to that. But for the project I just showed, it was appraised as like 2 giant single family homes and 2 backyard cottages during construction. And then when it was completed, we basically took it out as a co-op, bringing in the permanent capital stack. So co-op capital stacks are made up of blanket debt, which is what we think is particularly special about co-ops as a structure is that you can have blanket debt similar to a rental that's secured by the asset as a whole. There's no guarantor for that debt, so no individual that's living there has to sign that loan. Um, and you can that's a 30-year amortization schedule, competitive rates, and it's a very standard product. So there's a lot of that capital that exists. And at the same time, you can buy a resident share, which gives you the sole right to your home. So it's another legal route towards ownership, and you can get a mortgage on that share. So you're able to put 10% down to buy your resident share. Resident shares for these projects range in the like 150 to $400,000 range. In Seattle, most houses are above $1 million, and that's how we're able to really drive down the down payments of what people have to pay when they buy their home. In addition to that, we have a sub-debt product we've designed, which is another way we layer in other capital. I can speak more to how that's structured. But it's driving down the monthly expenses in the beginning when the project is first occupied. You can go to the next slide. This is just kind of what's in it for the landowner partners we work with. Right now, we have a wait list of 114 other property owners that want to do projects with us on their land. And Mary, who's working with us, she currently pays $2,500 a month in her mortgage and property tax. When the project is complete, she'll get a brand new home that's worth $300,000. Her monthly expenses will be less than half of what they were prior. And then she'll get the rest of her equity out as cash when the project is complete, as well as a return similar to the other investors in the project. So she'll end up with $340,000 of cash, which for her is a valuable way to sort of enter into a phase of her life, which will eventually lead to retirement and have some cash to do that with, while also staying in her neighborhood, staying on her street, staying on her land, and within the community that she's lived in the last 30 years. If you can go to the next slide. So yeah, currently we're have projects in Seattle. We expanded to the Bay Area last year, or 2 years ago, with support from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. So we're building a project in East Palo Alto, and then we have now 4 other in Seattle that are in various stages of permitting. All of our projects are hitting this sort of $10,000 to $40,000 down payment, and the middle income sort of like 60 to 120% AMI range. Kennedy, how much time have I spent? Am I past my time?
You're doing okay. You've got a little
Okay.
more time if you want.
Okay. If you go to the next slide. Um, I don't really want to talk about this in this moment. This is kind of part of our vision for how we can scale our work. Is not that we are developing all of the projects that we do, but we spent the last 6 years really building out the relationships with lenders within the co-op sphere, the legal documents, the financial kind of system, and we are now working with different small scale developers, community-based organizations, and partners to use that same structure to feed in our pipeline of land partners, which we can't meet ourselves within our team, into this network of partners, basically, so that we can create a lot more sort of this gentle density in single family neighborhoods, deliver more projects, allow more people to enter into ownership, and reduce the threshold to building co-ops, which can feel daunting and very complex if you haven't done it before. At the same time, we're doing a lot of education on the buyer side to help people understand, particularly for people who have been generationally renting and never owned, what it is to buy a home, and then also what it means to buy a co-op unit. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. I think like a key piece of our sort of philosophy of how we work is that a lot of sort of shared equity models and approaches bring a lot of kind of rely on very new products and thinking. And a lot of what we've worked to do is pull from a lot of the legacy co-op products that were more common for, 80 years ago when co-ops were the primary mode of multifamily ownership, and still are very used on the East Coast, kind of bringing those legacy products to new markets like Seattle and the Bay Area. And so using existing capital, existing sources of debt, and leveraging that with impact capital so that we're not having to raise a ton of equity to build our projects. And we have a partnership with JP Chase, who's been providing, their foundation's been providing us grant funding. And then the National Co-op Bank was the main co-op lender in the country, is a very close partner of ours. And you can go to the next slide. There's a lot of potential for this to kind of replicate in Seattle-Portland in the Bay Area. It is possible in other geographies as well. Something that's very important to the way we work is building by right, so not using variances, so that we have a more predictable entitlements pathway. So that is a big piece of it. And so we're really following the policy and also shaping some of the policy in cities that are actively engaging in new comprehensive plans and rezones. You can go to the next slide. And so like at a high level, our dream is just that you have, all of this new potential that's created when you pass a new comp plan or increase zoning. And currently a lot of that new value leaves communities that live in places that have been rezoned. Developers come build something new and then extract that value from a community. And part of what we see as a pathway is how to center that wealth creation and ownership and upside within an existing community during this process of densification. And then to build just a more inclusive pathways towards ownership and housing security for people without generational wealth. I think I'll stop there. Yeah, I can talk more about that, but if there's questions, but a lot of how we work is through sort of community organizing and the way that we've built a lot of trust with other owners within the neighborhood is through relationship building with people. And we don't see that as kind of like contrary to scale, but very much a part of how that's possible, is building trust and relationships, and that those have ripples. And that's something we've really seen play out in Seattle and the Bay Area. So yes, I'll stop there. Thanks.
All right, and then if we can just click through to our Q&A slide. Perfect. And I'll take one moment here before we jump in on Q&A. Reminder that this webinar is hosted in partnership with Smart Growth America and Locus. Locus is a sub-brand of Smart Growth America. Smart Growth America generally advances policies and lifts up projects and communities that are advancing equitable development. The Smart Growth North Star is the idea that everyone deserves to live in a sustainable, livable, walkable, vibrant community. And Locus is our coalition of triple bottom line real estate developers nestled under the Smart Growth America umbrella, who are really focused on delivering these products from the financing side of things and using that development expertise to get the job done. And so that's sort of what this Building the Stack series is about. So that's why we had Josh, Dave, and Sherry each present. And we're going to transition now into our question section. So I'm going to kick us off, and then eventually Chris will take over, but we're going to start here with a question for Dave. Dave, have you encountered challenges bringing in equity investors given below market returns, despite the attached impacts?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Raising capital is always the challenge. There's a certain scale that you need to make this work. That was one of the things we learned early on. Certain investors who only want to be 10 or $15 million, but also don't want to be more than 10%, let's say, of the overall capital stack. So one of the things is to be bigger rather than smaller, which may feel counterintuitive. We've hit a good mix of folks, large healthcare institutions, foundations, banks, insurance companies, a little bit of high net worth individuals. But I think we're really interested to see what is the limit of the universe of that capital. We're out raising for Fund 2 right now and trying to see how much broader we can make that base. So a challenge, yes, but doable. The question is just how big can it scale?
All right, next question is for Josh from Gail. She said, very interested in how we translate Frolic's model to other cities, especially cities that already have a community housing org that could be an owner of it. I'd love to develop my own neighborhood as a homeowner looking to add housing in a neighborhood I love and want others to be able to enjoy. So can you talk a little bit, I think you were talking about building that pipeline, but are there other folks doing the Frolic-esque co-op work in other markets? How is Frolic thinking about expanding?
Basically, we're looking at other geographies. We've been exploring Portland and Denver, and a lot of that has been driven by capital partnerships and then partnerships to community-based organizations and developers that either have trusted relationships within their community or have a lot of expertise in this space. And then the other is just the land use. It's a lot of what we're doing is driven by what can be built by right. So I think we've worked with some cities that we could see expanding to in 3 to 4 years once their land use is caught up, that are kind of in the early stages of maybe they've passed an ADU ordinance, but they haven't really gone beyond 2 dwelling units or 3 dwelling units per parcel. So a lot of it is driven by land use and then by the sort of partnerships in that region that allow this to work.
Thank you. Question for Sherry from Jill. In land trusts that utilized a mixed-use building, is the housing portion owned by the residents or is it rental? And can you talk generally just sort of about how mixed use is thought of in the land trust space?
So that's a great question. And the answer is it's real estate. It can be all different types of ways. There's no one way to do it, even if the land trust is involved. And so it really depends on the deal, the partners. And so the answer to your question is yes, it can be mixed income, some land trust owned units and some market rate units. But in the one of the examples that I was talking about, especially on the housing portion, like the home ownership portion, when we partner with developers, is typically a tract home developer building a larger subdivision, and they sell us a number of affordable units within that development. So it is mainly market rate with some land trust homes within it. That's one way and only one way that we develop new home ownership. So we can work with partners and we can also develop by ourselves.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm going to transition to a question for Josh about the Frolic model. Brian asks, would the Frolic model for single family sites where 4 to 6 housing units are possible rather than 6 to 10 work? As you know, many cities in Washington, including Seattle suburbs, have recently rezoned to allow 4 to 6 units, so there could be a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I actually just wrote the response in the chat, but yeah, we generally like to see more than 4, like 4 or more to make a project pencil with some shared outdoor space. And then also just for the cooperative financing partners we have, it's underneath 4 units, you would generally do a tenants in common or another model. So that's usually the threshold.
Thanks. And next one is also from Brian for Dave on impact capital. I often work in mixed use infill and TOD projects in the Pacific Northwest. The housing component varies and can be affordable or market rate. Often even the market rate projects are pioneering financially. They're in a rural location or low to mid income suburban markets. Are there any impact investors you have aware of that are interested in investing in market rate infill projects that are achieving public goals of TOD, downtown revitalization, placemaking, and community development? I think if you broaden this question out, it could also be sort of like, where do you find the people who are willing to invest in this stuff, and what kind of investors are we talking about?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that we've had is that we were building a national model, a challenge and opportunity. So on one hand, that gave us good access to much larger kind of national platforms, big national banks and insurance companies and so forth. When you think about doing this at a more regional or local level, there are some, there really tend to be a good depth of investors, especially if you can create the right vehicle to bring those folks together. So the city of Atlanta has a great affordable housing impact investment initiative. Charlotte, the same. Nashville has one, and others across the country. Whether it's about affordable housing or workforce housing or TOD or others, I mean, I think sort of branding it around let's say the priorities of the local stakeholders, and then going to the community foundations, banks, corporations, and others who are really deeply rooted in that community can be a very effective strategy as well.
Alrighty, next question here is from Luis for Frolic and Josh. Are HOAs a cost barrier or hurdle for 4 to 10 unit development? They're required in some states when you have more than one shared wall, and sometimes the additional monthly costs push costs. They push the cost of home ownership up for modest income buyers. How is that sort of shared maintenance managed? How is shared maintenance managed, and then how do you manage HOA costs?
So a co-op is has a board and runs much like an HOA. When I showed that capital stack and roughly half of it was blanket debt and the other half was individual mortgages, all of that blanket debt needs to get paid off by everyone's monthly assessments, which is a co-op fee, much like an HOA fee. So our projects have everyone pays a co-op fee that pays the maintenance, it pays the operating expenses, and it pays off the debt service on that shared debt. Um, as a whole, when all of the monthly expenses from your co-op fee and your individual mortgages are combined, that's where we're hitting that sort of like 60 to 120% AMI. So that's part of the package. They're generally a bit like for some units at market rent, some are a bit above, but then it's also an ownership model. So there's the added benefit of building equity.
Okay, I want to pause and invite any additional questions folks have here. And I'll give a beat. Oh, and Cole popped in with one. This is for Josh. With land restrictions being such an impediment to project, has your team thought about using a small scale community land trust model, to borrow from Sherry's line of work, on particular sites of interest as a method to help projects pencil? If not, have you heard of any successful examples of this that also implement co-op housing? And Sherry, I'd open up that question to you as well. Like, have you ever heard of co-ops and land trusts blending together? So Josh and Sherry.
Do you want to go first, Sherry?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, the project we're doing in the Bay Area in East Palo Alto is with a community land trust called Holly Land Trust. And so they are essentially the property owner that's contributing the land to the project. And it works quite well with that. They'll eventually act as sort of the asset manager for the project when it's complete. And what's interesting is I think we're really kind of ironing out the legal structure actively. But what a co-op can do is like allow for long-term affordability, and you can control through loan covenants or like loan documents and through the bylaws and the ways that the bylaws are controlled a lot of the same provisions that a land lease or ground lease also provides in a land trust. But what a co-op can do that's helpful is it can also use the appreciation of the underlying land in order to get better terms for financing over time. So if you look at co-ops that were built 30, 40 years ago, a lot of them have no more debt, shared, blanket debt left, but their land has appreciated so much that that co-op as an economic vehicle can take lines of credit, it can refinance and get cash out for improvements, and it has all of this underlying appreciation of the core asset that is shared between the project as a whole. So yes, it does work with community land trusts in certain ways, and there are community land trusts that build co-ops. Generally, they're limited equity co-ops where you don't have share loans and the shares are very small in value, and it's a bit more like a renter owned co-op. But Sherry, would love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Sure, I think it's absolutely possible. We haven't developed any co-ops yet, but we do have some smaller properties that are condos. So they're, 3 to 4 units on the same parcel of land. And it's almost the same thing. It's a little bit different here just because of the legal structure. But again, this is real estate and you can do almost anything that's legal with a contract and a lot of understanding.
Yeah, it is a consistent theme that sort of you've got to be willing to get creative and willing to branch outside your comfort zone. So I think I don't see any more questions. Oh, one last one from Kenneth. Does the co-op model reduce construction defect liability issues? This is for Josh, I would assume.
Yeah, that's a great question. We like law is as you know, like generally a gray zone, and in Washington State, in theory, it does, but we still get wrap policies on our projects out of fear of it not being true. But our lawyers all tell us that it doesn't apply to co-ops. So that's to be like we're interested in that answer as well, but we don't trusted enough yet.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'd remind everyone gathered today that this is available for AICP credit. And if we could go to the next slide. We want to invite everyone joined today to join us as Locust members. Again, Locust is a coalition of real estate developers, investors, and other stakeholders in the community focused on delivering smart growth aligned housing and development projects, including transit-oriented development, various forms of affordability in the housing space. And we'd love to have more voices join us. So please consider there's a 20% discount for joining this summer as part of our Building the Stack series. And if you're a part of a public entity and you look at the tiers, there's a little bit of flexibility available for those who are with a public enterprise. So reach out if you're interested. Thank you all so much for attending and stay tuned. You can visit our website. Next slide, please. smartgrowthamerica.org to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay tuned for a potential season 2 of this series, as well as check out our previous webinars and recordings of those. We'd love to have you join the Smart Growth community if you're not yet a member, and we appreciate your attendance today. Thanks all.